Guillermo del Toro did the giant monster and robot movie audience a favor by releasing Pacific Rim in theaters. The director chose to create a massively expensive love letter to the kaiju genre. So now, fans want to know, what are the chances of Pacific Rim 3 happening? Recap. The 2018 sequel Pacific Rim Uprising, which Del Toro only produced, was made possible by the sci-fi blockbuster's just sufficient box office success. However, fans of such grand spectacles are now speculating about the possibility of a Pacific Rim 3. Let's briefly review the first two films though, before moving on. The first film is set in the future, when the Earth is at war with the colossal sea monsters kaiju, which have emerged from an interdimensional portal at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean. To battle the mighty monsters, humanity will band together to create massive humanoids known as Jaegers. With a budget of 180 to 200 million, the film grossed over 411 million worldwide. In addition to Del Toro and a great story, the film featured some incredible cast crew members, such as Idris Elba, Charlie Hunnam, and Ron Perlman. The second film picked up 10 years after the original's events. The story centers on Jake Pentecost, who is given one final opportunity to carry on his father's legacy after kaiju monsters are released back into the world to destroy it. Pacific Rim Uprising, which was helmed by Stevie Nesta Knight in contrast to the first film, hasn't been regarded as a Guillermo del Toro production. The movie only made 290 million worldwide, which is a very low sum, given the high $150 to $176 million production cost. The reviews were generally negative, with a median score of 2.5 out of 5. But the visual effects, action sequences, technical marvels, and the stellar acting made it a lot of fun to watch. On the other hand, the movie's climax prepares the audience for some intriguing things that will happen in the future. There is currently some controversy surrounding the franchise, and it is uncertain whether a third film will ever be made. We can't speak to the release date because there isn't any potential for one. So we can only hope that a movie is being made somewhere and by someone to wrap up the Pacific Rim trilogy. Potential release date. Pacific Rim Uprising received a more mixed reaction from critics and audiences, and it failed to match its predecessor's box office returns. As a result, it quickly became questionable that the Pacific Rim franchise would receive a third entry. Given that the first movie came out in 2013 and the second came out in 2018, perhaps we can just say that things might go well in 2023. But none of those are certain, and nothing is official. Though it will continue in a different format, Pacific Rim is obviously not yet finished. Netflix will release Pacific Rim The Black, an original anime that builds upon the two films, sometime this year. Perhaps there will be more animated spin-offs, if that series is well received. It's also possible that Legendary will decide to incorporate Pacific Rim into their monsterverse, which is expanding to new heights this year with Godzilla vs. Kong. This would be an even more intriguing development. Although Del Toro may not currently be working on Pacific Rim 3, anything is possible in the entertainment industry. Perhaps some time will pass before something new is acknowledged. Who will be in it? The presence of John Boyega again would be ideal for a potential Pacific Rim 3, as his charisma and humor help Uprising get through its rougher patches. Charlie Hunnam's comeback could be entertaining as well, but Boyega is essential. On the other hand, Scott Eastwood barely makes an impression, despite playing a significant supporting role, so his character is probably not going to be missed the next time around. The lead female role was played by singer and pop star Haley Spadey, who made a great team with Jake. Therefore, we anticipate and sincerely hope that everyone mentioned above will return to reprise their roles in Pacific Rim 3. In addition, Titan Redeemer and Valor Omega won't be present because the Jaeger kaiju hybrids destroyed both of them. Before we go any further, we wanted to let you know that it's time for you to smash that like button if you haven't done so already. Tonight also assured followers on Twitter that if a Pacific Rim movie is approved, the narrative of the movie's titular, Mako Mori, would be covered. Despite Mako's passing in the second film, Tonight claimed that this storyline was far from being finished. Rinko Kikuchi played Mako, who died when an Obsidian Fury missile struck the helicopter's tail rotor. Bringing Mako back in some way would undoubtedly be a satisfying addition to a Pacific Rim 3 plot, even though it calls into question the validity of her death in the Pacific Rim Uprising. What could it be about? It is safe to say that the world will be expanding on a larger scale if the third installment of the title arrives on screens as well. And we know the Pacific Rim has been a lot of fun over time with its 2 installments. But the big question is, how Pacific Rim 3 will be set in the storyline, especially since the franchise's future is linked to a larger storyline. It makes perfect sense for Pacific Rim 3 to be approved, because there are still many unanswered questions, an additional backstory to be provided, and fresh tales to be told in the Pacific Rim universe. With the humans celebrating their victory over the precursors, Pacific Rim Uprising ended on a positive note. A post-credit cliffhanger seems to have been the original plan for Pacific Rim Uprising's final scene, but the directors decided it was a little too weak and decided to bolt it to the end of the film instead. In the climatic moments of the movie, Jake Pentecost tells Newt that to put an end to the precursors and kaiju once and for all, humans will have to take matters into their own hands. Jake's line appears to have sown the seeds for Pacific Rim 3 to not only delve deeper into the precursor's backstory, but also to take the story in a new direction. It's a setup for an ending that eerily resembles Independence Day: Resurgence, which also promised to take on the aliens in a third film. That most likely won't happen. While Uprising is an enjoyable blockbuster, it seems like Legendary is currently testing the brand to see if it will develop into a full-blown franchise. The Pacific Rim 3 tease at least promises a new environment for the enormous monsters and robots to stomp around in. That remains to be seen, as the film would need to earn a respectable amount at the global box office to cover the expense of a third journey. It was entirely up to Legendary, but Denied recently confirmed he has an idea for a potential third Pacific Rim film that would allow for a MonsterVerse crossover. This seems to suggest that Pacific Rim 3 might involve a crossover between the franchises, or at the very least, set it up. Even if Uprising fails to convince Legendary that Pacific Rim is a viable franchise on its own, combining it with the MonsterVerse is still a reasonable solution, since the characters in 2014's Godzilla don't seem to be aware of the existence of enormous creatures, despite the very first kaiju from Pacific Rim attacking the previous year. Some reworking would be required to tie the various franchises together. On the other hand, Pacific Rim established the concept of multiple universes, suggesting that it might be possible. On a curious side note, it's crucial to point out that Jing Tian, who portrayed San Lin in Kong Skull Island, also played the role of Li Wanxiao in Pacific Rim Uprising. In that movie, Lin works for Monarch, a group tasked with tracking down and exposing enormous monsters like Godzilla and Kong. Now, it's possible that Legendary hired Tian for Uprising without even thinking about her appearance, as 2 different characters could prove difficult if they decided to combine the franchises. But it's also possible that they did on purpose. As a result, you need to smash that subscribe button and notification bell so you'll never miss any of our videos in the future. Xiao might be a descendant of Lin, given that Uprising takes place 62 years after the events of Skull Island, which would establish a strong link between the MonsterVerse and Monarch. Or, admittedly, it could just be a coincidence. See you in the next video.